The Paracel Islands sit in the northwestern South China Sea, approximately 300 nautical miles east of Vietnam. In geographic terms, they are unremarkable. Coral reefs, small sandy islands, no fresh water, no indigenous population. But in strategic terms, they are among the most consequential island groups in the world. China has occupied them fully since 1974, transforming uninhabited coral formations into a network of military installations, airstrips, radar facilities, and Coast Guard bases from which it projects authority across the northwestern South China Sea with the systematic determination of a state that treats concrete and steel and uniformed garrisons as the definitive answer to any legal argument about sovereignty. The China Coast Guard operates out of the Paracels with a confidence that reflects China's investment in building the world's largest Coast Guard fleet, a fleet that by hull count exceeds any other nation's, equipped with weapons more commonly associated with naval combatants, and operating under authority from China's 2021 Coast Guard law that empowers CCG vessels to use force against foreign vessels it deems in violation of Chinese sovereignty, claims that international law does not recognize. The CCG is the gray zone, rendered institutional, uniformed, and bureaucratically legitimized. The deployment of water cannons against another nation's naval vessel is an act calibrated on a very specific rung of the escalation ladder. Below, live weapons employment. Above, presence operations. Physically affecting, visually dramatic, documentable, designed to generate imagery that Chinese state media presents domestically as defense of sovereignty, while maintaining the fiction that no military engagement has occurred. Its use against a United States Navy destroyer in international waters near the Paracel Islands had been building in intelligence assessments for 3 weeks. It was a Thursday. The time was 8:44 local. The South China Sea northwest of the Paracels was running with a moderate northeast swell. The sky overcast at medium altitude, visibility approximately 10 miles in the haze that characterizes this part of the ocean in the morning hours, before the wind picks up and clears the lower atmosphere. An Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer was conducting a freedom of navigation operation approximately 9 nautical miles west of Woody Island, the largest of the Paracel Island group, where China maintains its primary military installation in the archipelago, complete with a runway capable of operating fighter aircraft, surface-to-air missile batteries, and the Coast Guard base from which the contacts now developing on the tactical display had clearly originated. 4 contacts. The surface search radar had acquired them at 8:31, emerging from the harbor at Woody Island on courses that placed them on an intercept track with the destroyer's current position. 2 large contacts, CCG vessels, assessed at approximately 3,000 tons displacement based on their radar cross-section, and consistent with the CCG Type 718B class, equipped with a 76mm naval gun and high-capacity water cannon systems. 2 smaller contacts, CCG patrol vessels, approximately 600 tons, faster and more maneuverable than the larger ships. All 4 running at 22 knots on converging courses. None transmitting on AIS. None broadcasting on Channel 16. The watch officer had been tracking them since acquisition, building the geometry, running the CPA calculations, and forming the assessment that he now brought to the commanding officer's attention. Captain CIC, 4CCG contacts out of Woody Island, intercept geometry on our current track. 2. Type 718B assessed, 2 patrol vessels. No AIS, no radio. CPA projecting approximately 600 meters for the lead large contact. Request your presence. The captain arrived in 90 seconds. He looked at the display, the 4 contact icons, their course vectors, the projected CPA geometries, the destroyer's own position, 9 nautical miles west of Woody Island in international waters, where no territorial sea claim existed under any interpretation of UNCLOS that the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal had not already definitively settled. He looked at the timeline. He looked at the intelligence brief that the watch officer had already pulled up on the secondary display. The 3 weeks of collection indicating elevated CG operational tempo in the Paracels. The specific assessments about water cannon employment being authorized at lower thresholds than previously observed. ESM, what are they transmitting? Internal CCG network traffic, sir. Pattern consistent with coordinated operation under shore command direction. We're assessing active management from Woody Island Operations Center, shore directed. The 4 CCG vessels were not acting on the initiative of their individual commanding officers. They were executing a plan that had been authorized at a level above the individual ships, a level that, in the CCG's command structure, meant this operation had been sanctioned before the ships left the harbor. Someone at Woody Island, or above Woody Island in the chain, had decided today was the day to employ water cannons against an American destroyer conducting a freedom of navigation transit. Log everything, the captain said. Start the reconstruction timeline now. I want timestamps on every contact movement from initial acquisition. He looked at the weapons officer. What is the classification of the lead contact's gun mount? Type 718B carries a 76mm AK-176 mount forward, sir. Currently trained for, not elevated. Trained for and not elevated. The gun was in its stowed transit position, not trained on the destroyer. The Shore Command had drawn a line for this operation: water cannons and harassment, not live weapons employment. That line was noted and filed. All right, maintain course and speed. Do not deviate. I want this to be absolutely clear in the record. We did not alter course in response to their approach. He turned to the communications officer. Channel 16, English and Mandarin. Standard advisory. The transmission went out at 8:47. China Coast Guard vessels departing Woody Island, bearing 085. This is a United States Navy warship conducting a lawful freedom of navigation operation in international waters. We are operating in accordance with international law as established by the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. The features in this area do not generate a territorial sea under international law. We will maintain our course and speed. All your movements and actions are being recorded and transmitted to United States Indo-Pacific Command. This advisory is being provided in accordance with the 2014 Code for Unplanned Encounters at Sea. The 4 contacts maintained their approach at 22 knots. No response on Channel 16. At 8:53, the MQ-8C Fire Scout was launched. It climbed to 1,200 feet and moved northeast toward the approaching CCG formation, building the overhead picture that the surface search radar alone could not provide. In the CIC, the Fire Scout's feed appeared on the secondary display. The 4 CCG vessels visible from above, their formation geometry clear, their deck layouts showing the water cannon mounts on the forward and amidships positions of the 2 large vessels. The water cannon systems, high-pressure fire monitor systems, capable of projecting water streams at pressures sufficient to damage unprotected equipment and incapacitate personnel on an open deck, were visible on the Fire Scout's camera, crewed, oriented toward the direction of the destroyer. The Fire Scout's presence above the CCG formation was documentation and signal simultaneously. Documentation. Every detail of the 4 vessels, their weapons posture, their crew positions, their formation geometry, captured at 1,200 feet in continuous high-definition imagery. Signal. The CCG formation's shore command could see the Fire Scout's orbit on their own radar, knew that overhead surveillance had been established before any water cannon employment occurred, and was now making the decision whether to proceed, knowing that the first frame of whatever happened next was already being recorded from above. The geometry tightened at 8:58 with the lead Type 718B at approximately 4 miles. The ESM suite registered a change in the formation's internal radio traffic. A burst transmission from the lead large vessel to the shore command, followed seconds later by a return transmission. Instructions being confirmed, the decision had been made. The lead, Type 718B, activated its forward water cannon system at 0902. The Fire Scout captured the activation in the infrared channel. The thermal signature of the pump system coming online, the monitor mount rotating and elevating toward the destroyer's bearing. The mount reached its operational elevation and the stream began, a high-pressure column of water projecting from the CCG vessel's forward deck toward the destroyer at a range that, at 4 miles, meant the stream fell well short of its target. At full system capacity, the Type 718B's water cannon had an effective range of approximately 200 meters. At 4 miles, the display was entirely theatrical. Water cannon elevation at maximum. Stream projecting toward the destroyer's bearing, but falling into the ocean hundreds of meters from the CCG vessel's own bow. But it was a declaration. The water cannon system was active, it was oriented at the destroyer, and the CCG commander was communicating that when the range closed to the effective employment distance, the system would be used. "Log the water cannon activation," the captain said. "Timestamp, bearing, range, system status, visible on Fire Scout feed. That goes in the report as an aggressive act in international waters against a United States Navy warship." He looked at the surface warfare coordinator. "CPA projection update. Lead large contact still projecting 600 meters, sir. Timeline 14 minutes. 14 minutes to the CPA of a vessel with an active water cannon system oriented toward the destroyer." The captain made his next decision without visible deliberation. Launch the Seahawk. Forward position, directly between the lead CCG vessel and our position. 1,000 feet. FLIR running. Laser designator available. At sea, distance is language, and placing a Seahawk between the lead CCG vessel and the destroyer at 1,000 feet was a sentence in that language that translated clearly, "We see your water cannon system, we know your range and your intentions, and we have placed a manned aircraft in the geometry that you need to close to execute your plan." The Seahawk was airborne at 0905 and climbed to 1,000 feet, banking northeast toward the intercept bearing. The FLIR locked on the lead Type 718B's forward deck, the water cannon mount, the crew around it, the system's operational status, captured in the thermal imaging in clear detail. The imagery was transmitting to the CIC, to 7th Fleet, to Indo-Pacific Command, simultaneously. At 9:07, the CCG formation reduced to 16 knots. The lead large vessel and the trailing patrol vessels pulled back. The spacing within the formation, changing in a way that was not dramatic, but was measurable. 16 knots from 22. The CPA projection for the lead contact moved from 600 meters to approximately 900. The water cannon system on the lead Type 718B remained active, oriented, and crewed, but the vessel's approach speed had decreased. The second CCG development occurred at 9:09, and it was the development that the 3-week intelligence assessment had specifically flagged as a possible escalation option. One of the patrol vessels, the smaller, faster contact on the formation's eastern flank, activated what the ESM suite classified as a military-grade laser illumination system, not a navigation laser, not an optical sighting system, a directed energy device in the wavelength band associated with systems that had been used by Chinese maritime forces to illuminate, and in documented cases, to attempt to permanently damage the vision of the crews of aircraft operating in proximity to Chinese vessels. The laser was oriented at the Seahawk. The Seahawk pilot's voice on the tactical frequency was level. Bridge, Romeo 1. I have a laser illumination warning. Source assessed as Eastern Patrol Vessel. Laser warning receiver is active. Request permission to maneuver. The captain's response came in 3 seconds. Romeo 1, maneuver clear of the illumination. Brake left, descend to 500 feet. Re-establish your position on the western bearing of the lead contact. Do not close within 2 miles of the Eastern Patrol Vessel. The Seahawk maneuvered immediately, breaking the illumination angle and establishing a new position that placed it between the lead Type 718B and the destroyer, on a bearing that moved it away from the patrol vessel's laser orientation. The maneuver was smooth and professional, a response to a genuine safety threat that maintained the Seahawk's operational effectiveness while removing the crew from immediate risk. The laser illumination event was logged at 9:09:34. It was the most significant escalation in the encounter, not the water cannon, which had been theatrical at 4 miles, but a directed energy system activated against a manned American aircraft in international airspace. That was a different category of action, and the ESM suite, the Seahawk's own laser warning receiver, and the Fire Scout's overhead imagery of the patrol vessel's deck at the moment of activation had all captured it. Log the laser event, the captain said. His voice was as level as it had been for every previous development in the encounter. Time, source, vessel, Seahawk position at time of activation, duration of illumination, and the maneuver sequence. That event is specifically reportable under the INCSEA agreement and goes in the package to State Department as well as Indopacom. At 9:11, the captain authorized the Seahawk's laser designator, the MH-60R's non-lethal laser designator. Different from the military-grade illumination device the patrol vessel had employed, but carrying the same unmistakable message, painted the lead Type 718B's water cannon mount with 3 precise green pulses, 2 seconds per pulse. The camera crew on the CCG vessel's bridge would see it clearly. The shore command, monitoring the operation's status, would be told about it within seconds. We know the range of your water cannon. We know the position of your crew. We have chosen to demonstrate that knowledge rather than act on it. At 9:14, the lead Type 718B's water cannon system powered down. The Fire Scout's thermal imagery captured the pump system going offline, the thermal signature of the pressurized water system decreasing, the monitor mount rotating back toward its stowed position. The crew around the mount stood down. At 9:16, the CCG formation reduced speed again, 12 knots. The lead large vessel's course shifted 3 degrees to the right. A small adjustment that extended over time would open the CPA from 900 meters to something wider. The Eastern Patrol vessel that had activated the laser system was pulling back in the formation, increasing its distance from the destroyer's bearing. The geometry was stabilizing. The destroyer maintained course 095 at 15 knots throughout. It had not altered course. It had not reduced speed. It had not deviated from its freedom of navigation track in any direction or by any amount in response to the CCG approach, the water cannon activation, or the laser illumination of its helicopter. The record would show clearly, permanently, in the time-stamped track data that was already uploading to Indo-Pacific Command. A United States Navy destroyer, maintaining its lawful transit while a Chinese Coast Guard formation approached, activated water cannon systems, employed a directed energy device against its aircraft, and was met with professional documentation, proportional response, and zero-course alteration. By 9:31, the CCG formation had opened to 3 miles, and the range was steady. The 4 vessels were paralleling the destroyer's course at a distance that was no longer closing. Their formation loosened from the tight intercept geometry of their initial approach into something more consistent with surveillance than interdiction. The water cannon systems were stowed. The laser illumination had not recurred since the Seahawk's maneuver and the designator response. The Seahawk recovered to the flight deck at 0944. The Fire Scout maintained its orbit for another 22 minutes before the captain brought it back aboard at 10:06. Full reconstruction, the captain said at 10:09, as the tactical picture showed the CCG formation at 5 miles and steady. Every contact track from first acquisition, the water cannon activation sequence, the pump-on signature, the monitor orientation, the stream projection distance, the pump-off sequence after the designator response, the laser illumination event, source vessel, illumination duration, Seahawk maneuver response, the specific wavelength classification from the ESM suite, our Channel 16 transmission, and the CCG non-response. The CUS compliance assessment, what we transmitted, what the protocol required, what they did. He looked at the intelligence officer, the laser illumination specifically. I want that event in front of every analyst who covers CCG doctrine and directed energy employment. If this is a new authorized tactic, laser illumination of manned aircraft in international airspace as a standard CCG harassment tool, every commanding officer in this theater needs to know about it before their next freedom of navigation operation. He looked at the communications officer and transmit to state. The laser illumination event constitutes an aggressive act against a manned military aircraft in international airspace. That requires a formal response through diplomatic channels, and I want the documentation package available to State Department within 2 hours. The destroyer continued its transit west of the Paracels. The CCG formation maintained its 5-mile parallel track for another 40 minutes before turning northeast and returning toward Woody Island at 10:51. By 11:14, the 4 contacts were back within the harbor approaches, and the tactical picture west of the Paracels was clean. What had occurred on this Thursday morning near the Paracel Islands was an escalation in Chinese Coast Guard doctrine that had been signaled by the intelligence community and had now been executed. The employment of water cannon systems against a United States Navy destroyer conducting a freedom of navigation operation in international waters, combined with the use of a military-grade laser illumination device against a manned American helicopter. Neither action had achieved its intended operational effect. The water cannon had been activated at a range too great for employment and had powered down after a Seahawk laser designator response. The laser had driven a temporary maneuver by the Seahawk, but had not disrupted the American surveillance operation or the freedom of navigation transit that was the operation's core purpose. What both actions had achieved from the American perspective was documentation, the complete record of what China's Coast Guard was now authorized to do in international waters, near features it occupies: the water cannon doctrine, the directed energy employment, the coordination with a shore command at Woody Island that made every individual CCG action the expression of a deliberate institutional policy rather than a local commander's initiative, was now in the permanent record, available to every Allied intelligence service, every State Department legal analyst, every naval commander who would conduct the next freedom of navigation operation in these waters. Modern freedom of navigation operations are not won by the ship that maintains its course, though maintaining course is essential. They are won by the ship that maintains its course while building a documentary record so complete and so precise that the adversary's escalation becomes evidence of its own illegitimacy. The water cannon footage, the laser illumination timestamp, the CCG command frequency traffic, the fire scout imagery from 1,200 feet above a Chinese Coast Guard formation in international waters. These are the operational products of a freedom of navigation operation conducted correctly. They are what makes the abstract principle of international maritime law visible, concrete, and defensible in every forum where it matters. The Paracels remain occupied. The CCG vessels returned to Woody Island, and the United States Navy destroyer continued west, its track steady, its documentation complete, having demonstrated on this Thursday morning that the South China Sea's international waters belong to no single nation's Coast Guard, regardless of how many water cannons that Coast Guard deploys, and regardless of how close to those waters its military installations have been constructed.